tagline sort of says. We're going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles and then move into the Washington Commanders. We're going to talk in depth of the Eagles and then the Commanders. So we'll start with the Eagles tonight. Obviously, it's felt like a bit of a slow start for them, hasn't it, Johnny? I mean, there's a lot of question marks over this team at the minute. Currently 2-2, third in the NFC East. Obviously beat the Packers in Brazil 34-29. Then lost to the Falcons in that close game 22-21. Then beat the Saints in that another close game 15-12, and then lost to the Bucs over the weekend 33-16. Have to admit that they were without AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Obviously, it's the second week that AJ Brown has been out. But the sort of murmurs of upset around Philadelphia and their fan base and around the NFL is starting to slowly creep in here, Johnny, because this team felt so dominant just a blink of an eye ago, and now it feels like this team is incredibly beatable, and seems like the cracks are sort of showing. So what do you think is going wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles so far this season?
Yeah, I certainly think this is now becoming a bit of a long-term theme. Like you're right in saying that it wasn't too long ago when the Eagles were considered one of the best teams in the league, but I think certainly towards the end of last season there were murmurings. You could see I suppose the disgruntled nature of the relationship between Nick Sirianni and his quarterback Jalen Hurts. That came to centre quite quickly, I think, not just at the end of last season but into the off season, and that has spilled over into this year. And I think before the Buccaneers game, you could, if you were looking at this team and its record from the outset, without taking too much context away, they obviously 2-1, probably a catch away from being 3-0. Not defeat to the Falcons was very close. So you could have been, I think, forgiven for thinking that the Eagles were a strong team, and really excited. I suppose the fan bases must have been really excited, but the Buccaneers completely dominated them from start to finish, really, on Sunday, and that's been a trend, I think, for the last couple of seasons. The Buccaneers having the number over the Eagles, and I think this particular matchup is really significant because it shows that the Eagles haven't got an answer and haven't got a sufficient game plan, despite the injuries that you mentioned. This is one of the most talent-laden teams in the NFL, and they haven't been able to come up with an answer to Todd Bowles and the Bucs over the last couple of seasons, and it was exemplified this weekend. The team, I think, is really lacking discipline across the board. The offensive line is looking, it's giving up pressures everywhere, and that's not something that you expect from the Eagles. And I think it all comes down to poor man management, poor game management, and we've said time and time again that I've mentioned that the relationship between Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni has been something that has been cast into the limelight, and I don't know how this changes other than a change in leadership. The players don't seem to be willing to turn up for the coach. I feel it's a very heavy thing to say, but I think there are just so many red flags when you can clearly see. I think it's almost a lack of effort, I'd say. And is that because the team has quit on the head coach? We know how explosive these players are. This is a team that is very similar. They've obviously lost players who've been with the team over a number of years in the last couple of seasons since they got back to the Super Bowl just 2 seasons ago. But they have replaced them with like for like, really, really good players. And there is something obviously very quite clearly wrong with the Eagles, because their season isn't over if they're 2-2, but people are just writing them off already. And I think the window is closed on the team in terms of this setup. And I think the if you were going to make a change, I think it would have to start with the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the eyes are on Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts as well. There was a lot of people knocking around saying that Jalen Hurts was a top 5 quarterback in this league, and it's just not looking that way this year. They didn't really utilize Saquon. It felt like initially in Brazil, and then suddenly they went to him and it exploded. But a lot of pressure is being put on Jalen Hurts. But when I look at it, 15th best offense at the minute, 14th in passing yards, joint 18th on passing touchdowns. They are 8th in interceptions, which is a massive problem, obviously. But they're 7th in rushing touchdowns and 4th in rushing yards. They clearly have a game plan of what they're meant to be doing. And if they stick to that game plan, I think they can succeed. But you flip it over, everyone's criticizing Jalen Hurts and the way this offense is going. You flip it over to the defense. It's the 23rd best defense. They're 27 in total offensive yards. They allowed 948 yards, which is, like I said, 27th worst. They're 10th in interceptions. They only have 2 on the season. They're allowing they've allowed 515 rushing yards, which is 21st. They've allowed 7 passing touchdowns as well. So, running wise, they're not too bad, but over the top, they seem to be terrible. And that's where the books were beating them over the weekend. So is it unfair the criticism that Jalen Hurts is getting? Because it seems like his defense doesn't seem to be helping him out.
I think there's a combination of everything. I certainly think some of, I think the good thing about this weekend is we didn't see a Jalen Hurts turnover, but he was getting no help from his defensive line, and like you say, the offense has been the defense. In this game, obviously the Saints weren't really at it offensively last weekend, but they gave up points against the Falcons, they gave up points against the Packers, and that's not what you come to expect from the Philadelphia Eagles. This is the defense that you look around and it has, so many players, and
the whole of Georgia's winning defense,
the whole of Georgia
college,
football, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I think I read something earlier today that I think they may be second or third in terms of the amount of yards that they're averaging a game. Now that can be a combination of the offense not clicking, so they're giving the ball back to their opposition. But I think it's something's really not right. And I'm coming back to the saying that it all comes back to the game plans and people showing up for the coaches. They've not been able to get anything together. There's no pass rush, faulty tackling, and yeah, I think Vic Fangio at the moment hasn't been able to. We know how good of a coach he is defensively, but if you can't get anything out of the Philadelphia Eagles, then yeah, I'm not sure who can. So yeah, there are so many question marks on the team. I think Hurts, I think, has obviously got a lot of criticism, particularly for his his passing game and over the years. But I think this year some of the play calls from the Eagles haven't necessarily been his fault. Like you mentioned, obviously Saquon Barkley, the inability to get him into this game and at the start of the Packers game, and then obviously when they start to use him, we know what he can produce, but some of the fourth down plays have been pretty poor over the last couple of weeks. And yeah, I think that they're the pieces that people remember, I think. And I'm certain that a lot of Eagles fans will be circling back to those misplays when they're trying to make excuses, unfortunately, about why they're losing these games.
Well, it was Sirianni, isn't it? Sirianni is, he's getting a lot of critics for taking them risks, for doing too many risks. And, I think it has been it's been something amongst the Philadelphia Eagles fans for a hot minute now that he's not good enough that they sort of saw that Super Bowl run that they had going to the Super Bowl as an outlier, really. And, and that actually, it was the talent on the team that dragged them all the way there rather than the coaching. And and I think patience is wearing thin for Nick Sirianni, Johnny, and really, and the Eagles are one of the most passionate fan bases in the whole of NFL, and the Eagles have been seen as a team that is close to a Super Bowl every year. But now I think they're feeling that the coaching is what's holding them back from that Super Bowl win rather than pushing them forward. So my question is if it keeps going the way it is, do you think there's going to be pressure on that Sirianni could be out this season at some point?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that is obviously the injuries haven't helped the Eagles. Without AJ Brown, Lane Johnson, they haven't had a full team together. I don't think, or the fully fit strength team together so far this season. But we hammer down this is a team that is has so much talent and so many players, particularly in those trench positions that can seemingly slot in. There should be no reason why the Eagles are looking so bad. The way they are, and unfortunately, I think the Eagles fan base, certainly from talking to people and looking on social media, obviously that can be a tough place to start, but it really feels that the fan base has turned on Sirianni. Some of the things I think he was talking about. He wasn't able to explain the identity of his team in a press conference over the weekend, and yeah, I think the Eagles aren't going to be, they aren't going to be, they're not going to get back to where they were at the start of last year. Obviously they got to the Super Bowl the way we were before without addressing these these poor relationships, this poor atmosphere that's within the roster, and unfortunately, the main person responsible for that atmosphere and for this this team going into games is the head coach. They've obviously tried with the different play calls on both sides of the field, but if they're not able, two great minds in Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore, if they're not able to make drastic changes to the team on both sides of the ball, I think it comes back to Sirianni, unfortunately. There are plenty of names out there on the head coaching free agency, to be able to perhaps turn things around even this season.
A certain ex-Patriots head coach might be out there. But,
can you imagine? If I was an Eagles fan, I'd be absolutely all over that. I think it feels like it's you're not going to find out if you do it in that sort of thing. I'm sure Bill Belichick would again be all over coming straight back into coaching and taking on a team that has genuine Super Bowl aspirations. I obviously don't want to speak ill of a head coach, but unfortunately, I think Sirianni is on his last legs in Philadelphia, and I'm expecting a change. It just depends when that is. Can they save the season? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think change is looking pretty imminent. It'd be interesting to see what other people think, what you think, but that's how I see it.
I think this fan base is unforgiving. They got rid of Doug Peterson, rightly or wrongly, after winning a Super Bowl with them. Okay, how he's doing in Jacksonville, maybe that was the right decision in the end, and also how he did in Carolina, but I don't know. It's a hard one. I'm just texting Gareth now. I just said about Bill Belichick for Eagles, and he's just gone, now I prefer Mike Vrabel, which I think that works. That works fantastic.
That'd be great. I think either of those guys, I think Vrabel particularly, we know how he's obviously a young guy who's got great experience in the NFL. He was able to build a Titans team who obviously didn't have the same, had good players, but didn't have the the quality, I suppose, across the board that the Eagles had, and was able to take them to great depths over his, over the years. So I think Vrabel just fits the mentality. I think that's the main thing for the Eagles, because I think the change in mentality. If you can have someone like a leader like Mike Vrabel, we've seen what Dan Campbell can do for the Detroit Lions without necessarily being, a studied coach in terms of the qualifications, the badges, the experience. You can have someone that can just instill a good atmosphere and a good team ethos, and let the coaches get on with doing their job. I think that makes for at worst a decent football team, and that feels like the Eagles. They could still end up having a great season, as we've said, with their record, but they don't feel like a decent football team at the moment, and have scraped to the record.
We'll have to keep an eye on what they go over. But Mike Vrabel, I never even thought about Mike Vrabel, but I do really like that. I really love the idea of that. Let's talk.